Namaste. Amen and blessed be. So I've only moved a small handful of times in my life. I mean, like really moved to a very different location. And probably the biggest of those moves was when I left Oklahoma to head to Denver for graduate school. By then I was in my mid-20s. I had already left home 5 or 6 years before to head to college. And I had briefly lived in Washington, D.C. I had even left to go to the Peace Corps in West Africa for a while. Somehow, though, leaving to head to graduate school felt like an especially big move. As my friend and I hauled a trailer of all my belongings, the topic came up. And I remember him wisely explaining that this move feels different because you have no real plan to come back here. And you don't know where you're going after seminary. He was right. Sometimes we set out on a journey before we really know the destination. That's what I want to talk about today. Letting go of what we know to open ourselves to new possibilities, even unknown possibilities. It takes a little bit of faith to let go of what we know and to journey toward the unknown. It's kind of like riding a bike. You don't know the sensation of riding a bike until you're actually doing it. It's a scary endeavor, and until you learn to let go, you can never do it. With a little bit of faith and some support from friends that tell you you can do it, you can get there. Letting go of what we know and stepping toward the uncertain is a scary proposition. And hear me out, I'm not encouraging us to live lives of reckless abandon. Fear is a very natural and a very helpful emotional response to the world. That basic response is what kept species alive through the brutal trial of evolution. We're here today because our ancestors were appropriately afraid of some things. More recently, fear guided your parents and your grandparents into making prudent or semi-prudent decisions about building a family. Fear has its place. Sometimes, though, fear of the unknown, fear of stepping outside of what we're certain of, can rob us of a whole world of possibilities. We can't learn to float or ride a bike without conquering the fear of letting go. We can't fully embrace life without occasionally having a little faith to step toward the unknown. This month, for the Ministers' Seminar, several of us are reading the book America Anonymous. The book tells the story of 8 different people who are struggling with addictions of different kinds. The struggle of addiction always reminds me of how hard it is to embrace change in our lives. And of course, there is the physical disease of addiction that's very chemical and very much about brain physiology. But the physiological addiction is also reinforced by the emotional difficulty of making changes in our lives. Now, getting rid of an addiction often means finding new friends, new places to hang out. It can mean finding new ways to spend our time, and it almost always means having to face our emotions without the filter of addiction. It's difficult to let go of what we know, even when what we know is dangerous. It's not just addiction that is a struggle for us. For thousands of years, Buddhists have found the practice of letting go as their path to liberation. Roughly 2,500 years ago, the Buddha realized that letting go was the way. After trying a bunch of different philosophies and really strict religious practices, he sat down to meditate for a long time and realized that happiness wasn't about finding one answer to hold on to desperately. Just the opposite. Our mission is to let go. It's the foundation of Buddhist philosophy that he realized in that moment. A pretty simple concept of 4 noble truths. The first one is that life is suffering. That's the way people usually describe it. That sounds horribly pessimistic. But it's kind of true. From the time we come into the world, we experience challenges, sickness, loss. We're never fully satisfied. In fact, I think maybe a better translation for that is all life is dissatisfaction. He wasn't a complete pessimist saying life is awful, but we're always longing for something different or remembering the past and wishing it had been a little bit different. And even if we love something, we want more of it. We attach ourselves to something other than what we have here and now. That brings us to the second noble truth. And that is that suffering in our lives or dissatisfaction comes from our attachment to things and ideas. We get attached to material things, we get attached to disappointments, attached to desires for the future. So, life is suffering or dissatisfaction. So the second noble truth is that attachment or longing is the cause of that suffering. The third noble truth is pretty logical. Ending that constant attachment is the way to end suffering in our lives. Letting go. And then the fourth noble truth, the Buddha lays out sort of a pathway for letting go that covers pretty much every area of our life. And the Eightfold Path, I want to name these just so we get an idea. They're right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. And in each of those activities, the right way to perform them is in a way that doesn't cling to expectations or regrets, a way that expresses compassion right here and right now. Now that Buddhist path can be an incredible journey for a lifetime, or I guess a few lifetimes, depending on how you look at it. Letting go and stepping toward uncertainty is one of the defining journeys of adulthood, and it's about to be one of the defining journeys of our community together. I talked a little bit about this a few weeks ago, but Christmas Eve, December 24th, will be our last worship service here in this space at Tapestry. Beginning appropriately on New Year's Eve, December 31st, we will begin worshiping at St. George's Episcopal Church in Laguna Hills, not far away. And in order to share that space with the congregation there, we'll push our worship service back just a little bit to 11:30. But other than that pretty minor change, our Sunday morning activities will continue in a very similar way that we carry things out here. The move to St. George's is a temporary measure. We're aiming to be in our new building at Lake Forest and the 5 freeway around June. Moving twice is going to be a stretch for our community. It will be an exercise in trusting one another and in letting go. Leaving here won't be a huge sacrifice. We don't own this building and we haven't been here that long. We're not letting go of an object, but we are letting go of familiarity. And familiarity is worth a lot. And we know a lot about the buildings that we're moving into, both St. George's and the property that we're renovating. We know how they're laid out and we know what they're going to look like, but we don't know how they're going to feel. We don't know who will sit where. We don't know how we as a family will settle into the new space together. As we let go of what we know and step into the unknown together, we'll need to remind one another of why we're making this journey. We're stepping toward a more financially stable future. We're stepping toward being able to serve a larger community. And we're stepping toward strengthening our mission of building beloved community and invoking more compassion and justice in the world. Now, I think there's more to exercising our faith than just letting go. Remember, fear is a powerful and useful thing in our world. There has to be some compelling reason for us to loose our steel-tight grip on what we can control in life. Part of the courage to let go is trusting something bigger than ourselves is on our side. In 12-step programs, participants are asked to recognize that they are powerless over their addiction and that only a power greater than themselves can restore them to sanity. Now, of all the religious traditions and philosophies and self-help stuff I have read out there, I think that chunk of 12-step philosophy resonates most clearly with our Unitarian Universalist tradition. It doesn't really matter what that power is, but recognizing the limits of our own ability and laying the rest in the good graces of a power greater than ourselves is essentially what our faith is about. For some people, that's God. For some people, it's the beauty and creative force of nature. Some of us find support in the redemptive power of human love and compassion, like Nicola was telling us about. Something, whether you call it God, love, goodness, nature, something is the foundation that draws you to take one more step in the journey. What defines us as a tradition isn't the object of our belief, but how we hold on to it. I recently read a description of Unitarian Universalist belief that was like a bag, and I couldn't help think of trick-or-treating this time of year. Now, every person has a bag of beliefs that they collect over time. Babies aren't born into the world with a set of beliefs about the nature of the universe. But we pick things up from our families and our culture and our friends, and we probably read a little bit. Some of us have experiences of awe and wonder at the world. We gain a sense of the holy. But what makes Unitarian Universalism special is how we hold on to that bag of beliefs. Some traditions hold their bag very tightly at the top, making sure that nothing sneaks in and nothing sneaks out. Some people just hold their bag in one hand, not paying much attention, letting stuff spill out all the time, and who knows what's going to get thrown in there. Worst of all, some folks hold their sack of beliefs like a weapon, something to swing around and clobber other people with. I like to think that we Unitarian Universalists hold our beliefs out in front of us with two hands. We hold the sack open, hoping to gain new perspectives, and we pay attention to what goes in it. From time to time, we sort through and remove the worn-out old beliefs that are just taking up room. The contents of our sacks vary person to person, but we strive to be aware of what we believe and how we're holding on to those beliefs. Because It's the awareness of something bigger than ourselves that makes stepping away from the known and toward the mystery a little more bearable. I think that faith comes into play when those beliefs that we carry around come into contact with our real lives. Faith isn't an object that you can just leave in a bag or nail up on the wall. It's something that gets acted out in our lives. Now, we usually talk about our relationship with faith as something that you have, but I think that's the wrong verb. Rather than talking about having faith, a better phrase might be using faith. And the more we use it, the better we know it, the stronger it gets. There might even be ways of practicing it. This is a reminder, I'm not encouraging reckless abandon. I'm talking about stepping out toward the uncertain in ways that resonate with our deepest beliefs. I was thinking this week that maybe generosity is a way of exercising our faith. A couple of weeks ago, I found myself in a conversation with a few tapestry folks about how we respond to people on the street when they ask for money. And we went around and around about who to give what to. And how do you know how they're going to use that money? And isn't there an organization that we should support instead? It's a hard question. The conversation never came to a satisfying conclusion for me until I was writing this sermon. And it seems to me now that giving money to folks who ask for it on the street may be a small exercise in faith. By giving our money, we let go of control, and that's a good thing to practice. We send the message and we reinforce for ourselves a very particular belief. It's a small statement that I believe in you. More generally, I believe in the goodness of people. And I might get scammed from time to time. You might use that money to buy drugs or alcohol or who knows what. But as a general rule, I believe that people are good and they do best when they have an opportunity to make decisions for their own well-being. Now, I'm not going to go start handing out $20 bills on the street corner. But I think that giving away small amounts of money to someone who needs it could be an interesting way of exercising our faith. If you want to experiment with that exercise of faith, I'd love to hear some feedback. Another exercise that occurred to me to get us more comfortable with change and letting go is a preparation for our adventure together as a community. It's simple. Next time you're at Tapestry, sit somewhere else. I have in previous worship services asked people literally to get up in the middle of the service and move to a different area of the room. That's not very easy. Not all of us are that mobile, and we're a little more crowded than we used to be. But next time you come, try sitting in a different area. We're about to make big changes. Warming up with some smaller ones might be a good idea. There are 1,001 ways of using our faith, practicing step by step, leaning into the uncertainty. We could all do with a little more practice, because who knows what change is waiting around the next corner. In this sermon, I've mostly posed letting go and stepping toward uncertainty as an option. We all know, though, that tomorrow is never certain. Just when I think things are figured out and on stable ground, that's when something really bizarre happens. either a magical twist or a serious challenge. The optional moments of letting go are really just practice. Whether it's a career change to follow your dreams or giving the guy on the street a couple of dollars, stepping toward the uncertain is practice. It's an opportunity to remember the power greater than ourselves and preparation for the time when it's the only thing that we can rely on. Amen.